All right, Josh Smith here, live at my studio, Flat 5, and today's guest is one of my favorite players. I first saw him play with Charlie Musselwhite a long time ago at some blues fest somewhere, I'm sure. He had 335 and a matchless. He was loud as hell. And just there it is. He's playing his ass
Yeah.
off. He played with Jimmy Witherspoon. He played with Lowell Folsom. I think I saw him with Curtis Salgado once. He lives in Vegas now, but he's just one of my favorite guitar players and someone you all need to know. So please welcome John Wedemeyer.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much, man. I didn't know that you saw me with Charlie
Oh
and
yeah,
Curtis.
way
I know.
back. Yeah,
Oh man, I did that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Tell you,
yeah, dude.
I tell you what honor it is, man, to be here. Thanks for inviting me, man. I'm flattered beyond belief.
Thanks, dude. Well, so I've been asking everybody, their story and kind of how it gets started for them. So I know your mom was really instrumental in supporting you to be a musician, but
Yeah.
I don't think she was a musician, right? So how did the
It was not.
guitar actually first end up in your hands?
Well, neither of my parents were musicians. But they loved music. So between my dad, who was like really into big band and swing kind of stuff, and then my mom, who was into like the Beatles and early Elvis and Little Richard, and she liked rock and roll stuff. Like I heard a lot of music growing up around the house. Neither of my parents were musicians. My grandfather was a trumpeter in the big band era, and he was actually a professional trumpet player. And then one day he woke up and had lost all the muscle control in his lips and had to become a mailman. So he's the only musician that I'm aware of in my family. But to answer your question about the guitar, I was kind of starting to get into music, and I had some 45s, and I was listening to like Elton John and some rock stuff. And I remember very vividly the song "Fame" by David Bowie.
Wow.
And I didn't know what that was, and I asked my mom. I said, "Is that saxophone?" And she said, "No, I think it's an electric guitar." And I went, "Ooh, that's cool." And then I started hearing records at my friends' houses. A buddy of mine had an older brother. I used to go to his house, and I would hear Zeppelin records coming out of his room. And every time I would hear a riff like The Ocean or Black Dog or something, I'd go like, "Holy shit, what is that?" And then, so the turning point for me was I went to this midnight movie. I don't know if you remember this, or maybe I don't know if this was happening when you were a kid, but they used to play these rock movies at theaters at like midnight, and they would play it at concert volume, and people would smoke weed and applaud for songs. It was like going to a concert. So I went and saw The Song Remains the Same, which was the Led Zeppelin movie.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all those riffs I was hearing at my friend's house came pouring out from the same band. And I saw Jimmy Page in this dragon suit with his Les Paul like down
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And I went, holy shit. And so like I walked out of there just absolutely in love with the guitar. But it was actually my mom who went and signed me up for lessons. And I don't know that I would have even pursued it, but she came home one day and said, "Hey, I was out shopping today and I signed you up for guitar lessons." And so I went in the next week. And so I have my mom to thank for actually pushing me, because I don't know if I would have taken the initiative. You know what I mean?
That's awesome, man. And it's amazing how the visual is so important, especially pre-YouTube and all that for anybody younger than this generation. The first time you
Yeah.
see these people you've been listening to, it's just like earth-shattering. Like they're the coolest thing you've ever seen.
It really is, man. And I was in sixth grade. I was like 11 or something like that. And to see, not only the music and the sounds, because I didn't realize it was all the same band that I kept hearing at my buddy's house.
Right.
And then you see Page, who's like the coolest looking dude in the world, and playing all that guitar. I mean, it was pretty mind blowing. You're right. The visual thing like hit me as hard as the music. And I
Absolutely.
just went, coolest guy in the world, and I wanted to play guitar, and so that was kind of my, like, Zeppelin was, I was aware of some music leading up to that, but Zeppelin was like the gateway for me. That was the thing that made me go, man, I got to do that.
Okay, so your mom signed you up for the lessons. How long did you
Yes.
last at that place? Was it a good place or was it like just a stepping stone?
No, it was a great place, and I only had one teacher, and it was that guy. And I got really lucky because my mom, literally, she was out shopping and she just walked into a music store, signed me up. And, you know, at the time, it's not really like that cool when your mom signs you up for guitar lessons. You know? Not exactly rock and roll, you know. So I was kind of like, all right, I'll go check it out or whatever. And I went in and I sat down with this guy, and he was like Obi-Wan Kenobi for me. It was just immediate this, you know what I mean? We locked, and he asked me some questions. He gave me a couple things to play. I went home. I came back a week later. I played him, and he said, "Wow, you nailed it. That was perfect." And then the little 40-watt bulb went on over my head.
Yeah.
And I finally found something I could do. That was the only teacher I had, and I stayed with him about 8 years or something. And that's the only formal training I had was him. And he gave me a really good like foundation, and he taught me how to read. He taught me some theory, but the most important thing he did was he opened my head up to music, you know. And I remember he asked me at my first lesson, he said, "Who's your favorite guitar player?" And I said, "Jimmy Page." And he said, "Oh man, Jimmy Page is great." And he said, "Jimmy Page learned from listening to this guy." And he handed me a copy of Live at the Regal, B.B. King.
Wow.
Now, if I had seen Live at the Regal in a record store as a kid, I probably wouldn't have been interested. It's kind of an older dude in a suit with a jazz guitar on the front, you know, nothing that would have grabbed my eye. But when my guitar teacher told me that my favorite guitar player dug him, I couldn't wait to hear that, you know. And that just absolutely blew my mind. And so he had me at a very early age listening to blues and a variety of music that I can't even tell you how crazy the variety was that he had me getting into when I was still in like junior high. And you know, he had me listening to everything from blues to the Mob Vishnu Orchestra to Chet Atkins, you know, I mean, just you name it.
And how old a guy was this? Was he way older than you, or what was his age?
He was, well, when I went to him, I was 11, and he was probably, you know, mid to late 20s or something.
Okay, so he was a
So
young guy. He was pretty hip. I mean, because he's hipping you to
very
cool
hip.
stuff. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He was very hip. And unfortunately, he just passed away a few months ago. But
Oh.
we kept in touch, you know, like through the years. But the cool thing about him, his name was Rick. The cool thing about Rick was that he stopped at Roy Buchanan. That was like the most modern player that he was into, and he didn't know any of the stuff, the current stuff. So I would bring him stuff, you know what I mean? Like he would, you know, Roy was his guy. Like he loved Roy, and beyond Roy, he was kind of, you know, he dug Joe Walsh and Jimmy Page and guys, Jeff Beck, stuff like that. But I would bring in records, and I'd go, "Hey man, you know, check out you know, Steve Morse." And I'd bring in some Dixie Dregs or some Van Halen or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was turning him onto records later, you know. It was really cool. And and every week he had an album for me, you know. It was like Albert Collins, Ice Pickin',
Yeah.
you know, like every week he would hit me to some music, you know. Wes Montgomery was, you know, like huge. He turned me on to Wes and Roy Buchanan. But it was really the coolest thing besides the tools that he gave me on the guitar was the fact that he just opened my head up to music and not just like rock guitar. You know, I'm pretty sure if I hadn't hooked up with him, I probably would have just been, you know, playing nothing but rock if I was playing at all, you know.
Well, it's amazing how, you know, everybody that first the teacher or your brother or whatever it is that shows you something and is enthusiastic about it and instills
Yeah,
like just this love. You know, it's such a difference between going to some classical guitar teacher who tries to show you how to put their foot on the stand and where to hold the
yeah,
guitar and, you know, play this scale at this tempo, blah blah blah. It's like
yeah,
that can work, and it's a certainly useful tool, but if the joy is instilled, that's what sets
right.
you up for life to do this forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. Because otherwise it's like math or something. It's like homework, you know. But
Yeah.
man, I mean, he would make me really excited about the next lesson. I just couldn't wait for Wednesdays, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so we had lessons where the guitar didn't even come out of the case, man. He would just sit there and talk to me about,
Yeah.
you know, just concepts and like, you know, or he would sit there and I'd be playing and he would say, "Hey man, make it rain, man. Let me hear rain." You know, and I'd look at him, I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he would, by the end of the lesson, he had me doing it. And I went, "Holy shit, I get it." I mean, he really kind of a bohemian, like kind of hipster sort of dude.
Mm.
Yeah. But man, I mean, he opened my head up in so many ways. And like you said, he really made me want to do it. I mean, I just, all I lived for was those lessons, man, with him and
That's
getting a
sweet.
new record to listen to. And he did another cool thing. that I just remembered that he would make these cassettes like a mixtape of different styles. So like, you know, like a whole tape of like Delta blues, you know, just one, you know, one or two cuts from like his favorite guys, you know.
Yeah.
And then volume 2 was like electric blues, you know, there'd be like Albert, Freddie, T-Bone, you know, Eddie Taylor, stuff like that. And I learned so much about music just from like tapes he would make me and albums he would give to me. And it just made me, you know, I just fell in love with all of it, you know, not just guitar, not just getting my work done, but I just couldn't wait to go hang with him. You know, it was just so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so you're with him from middle school through high school, it sounds like. Was there any
Yeah.
music in your high school? Was there any sort of music in school?
Well, yeah, they had a music program, but I didn't really take part in it. I played in high school. I briefly played bass in their jazz ensemble when there was a friend of mine who was playing guitar, and their bass player left or got let go or something, and they needed a bass player. I didn't know how to play bass, but I said, yeah, I'll do it. And we were doing like Children of Sanchez, you know, like Chuck Mangione, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I played a little bit of bass, but I was never a part of the music program at school. I was just all about the guitar lessons. But I did, I had a fusion trio in high school. And this is interesting. There's a great drummer named Eric Kretz who plays drums with Stone Temple Pilots. And he and I had a fusion trio in high school. He went to a school. I grew up in San Jose, California. He went to a school across town. I met a bass player who I was in school with, and he said, you got to meet this drummer. And we ended up in a little shack, like rehearsing like Return to Forever and Mahavishnu Orchestra and Brand X and all this like prog and fusion stuff. And we used to play at parties, like cake parties, doing like fusion and prog, you know. Chicks were running exits.
So were those your first gigs?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And they were, you know, they were cake parties, man, but our buddies would throw them and they would hire us, or they didn't even hire us. We just went over to play. But we could play like enough Rush and Zeppelin to get them into it. And then we would say, hey, here's something from Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever, you know, or here's some Dixie Dregs.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of, aside from taking guitar lessons, that was the thing, I think, was playing fusion with my buddies every once in a while, like at parties and stuff. But no, I never went to music school. I never participated in high school in the music thing other than playing a little bit of bass in that jazz ensemble.
Mm. And San Jose, there's a lot of guitar players from there, you know. You have a lot of guys around your age in that generation. What do you think was going on around there at that time?
Man, I'll tell you what, it was a hell of a place to grow up. I mean, there were so many great players, and still are. But at that time, man, for me in high school, there were two guys in San Jose who really inspired me, and I would go to see play every chance I get. And you know both of them, Lyle Workman. I was playing at a party with Eric in that fusion trio, and we opened for another trio, and it turned out it was Lyle Workman. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who he was, and I'll never forget. He had just got this Jim Kelly amp, and he had a Jim Kelly combo with like an Altair power attenuator on top of it, and he had a red 35. And absolutely tore my head off that night. I mean, they were doing Lead Boots, they were playing, you know, Stratus, they were doing all this stuff. And I was like 15 or something, man. I was just absolutely blown away by that guy. And we became friends. We're still friends to this day. And just one of my and you know, I know you guys know each other.
I'm interviewing him next week.
Oh, great. Well, you can ask him about that. Yeah.
I will. I
was 15 and, you know, I mean, it's like a movie in my head, man. I remember seeing him play just a little bit around town, and then later he joined Bourgeois Tag and some pro bands, and I used to go see him any chance I got to go see him. Now, the other guy was Chris Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chris, of course, everybody knows who Chris is now, but at the time, man, when I was like 15, he was playing around town with his band. But the interesting thing is back then, they didn't play any blues. It was a fusion band.
Yeah.
And you know, he's an incredible jazz player and just an incredible musician in general. But the band wasn't doing any blues, man. It was all like Yellow Jackets and David Sanborn and Jeff Lorber Fusion and stuff like that. And I used to sneak into bars when I was 15 and watch Chris play. And it was like seeing, you know, the Yellow Jackets with Robin Ford to me. You know, they were playing those songs, and Chris was just absolutely, it was ridiculous. And then I remember one night at this bar, and he played his first original tune that he had played with his band, and it was a blues tune. It was the first time he played a blues song with his band that I saw. And it was a song called Wake Up and Smell the Coffee. And he says, yeah, this is a new song that I wrote. It was a shuffle. And all of a sudden from there, it was just like this, man. He became like the blues guy, you know?
Right.
But the interesting thing is, in the early days, he had a fusion band, and he was 335. So this guitar I got because of Lyle Workman, Chris Kane, Robin Ford, Larry Carlton, the guys I was listening to, but also the guys I was around town, because I went, man, that's the shit. I want my guitar to sound like that, you know?
Well, you know, I
So
think that's an,
those are just two guys, by the way. There were a bunch of great players, but those were the two that really turned my head around in
but
town.
that's an overlooked aspect of everybody's upbringing. Now, you were fortunate that two of the guys that you were seeing in your town were world class and would go on to be well-known players. But
Yeah.
the local guys that we grow up around and see play are a huge influence on you when you're a teenager and when you're kind of coming into finding this voice. There's scores of guys who nobody would know that I grew up seeing that had a huge influence on my,
Yeah.
growth as a musician. So yeah, you were very fortunate to have those guys.
Oh, believe me, and I'm still friends with them to this day. And to watch both of those guys, you know, get to where they are now. I mean, it's amazing to me that it's taken this long for people to find out about Chris. You know, thankfully YouTube and stuff like that. But in my opinion, you know, like one of the top, you know, if not the top West Coast blues guy, you know, and then Lyle. I mean, geez, Lyle just took a left, and I mean, Lyle was a burning player, but now he's known as a composer and a film. But I know, I mean, that guy can just tear your face off with a guitar, man, and he's
Absolutely.
very modern. I don't really play much anymore. And he'll send me something. Hey man, listen to this thing I did, and I'm going like, oh, are you kidding me? I feel like I'm 15, getting my mind blown. Hey, I'm curious. You didn't grow up in Southern California, right?
No, I grew up in South Florida. So,
Oh,
I was,
oh,
it was a different scene down there. I was seeing a lot of guys who went at that time. UM was super hot for jazz. So everybody was coming down to UM in Miami and graduating. And then those were the people I were seeing, 20-year-olds who had just finished college, 25, 30. And they were all, wanting to be Pat Metheny, Steve Morse, Jocko.
yeah,
That was like the scene that was, 10 years older than my scene, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And one more question for you. Did you take lessons ever? I don't know
Oh
this.
yeah, absolutely. I took lessons from 6 till probably 14, 6 till 14.
Oh,
And I started gigging when I was 12, so I didn't have quite as much time for lessons, but I kept
yeah,
going when I could, maybe once a month. Mostly because, like you said, I had made a relationship with this guy, and it was
yeah,
we would just sit there and listen to music, and I would ask him
yeah,
questions, or and then it would get to be more we were friends as opposed to he was my teacher, and it was just such a great environment. I was lucky. So my first teacher was a jazzer. My second teacher was a blues guy who, was just turning me on to everything. And then my third teacher was a rock guy, but he was incredibly like musically schooled. So he was giving me
wow,
fundamentals, and it was a good mix.
great. That's it, man. I mean, you were lucky too then in that case to have that kind of relationship with your teacher, because as you know, I mean, I've done some teaching over the years, and you know, you can get like a great teacher and a good player in the same room and it might not click, but to
Yeah.
connect with somebody like that, to where you're just sitting there and the guitar is in the case and you're listening to music, you know, it's nothing like it. I remember once, I remember taking it. You remember that song "The Bash" by the Dixie Dregs? That
Yes.
really insane like chicken picking thing. And I
Yeah.
took that into him. And you got to hear this guy. And I played the Bash, Steve Morse for him. And I remember he said, "Man," he goes, "it really sounds like a chicken."
That's
You
funny.
know, but you know, we had that kind of relationship. I would just go, "Hey, Rick, you got to hear this. You got to hear this Eddie Van Halen solo or something," and he would just, you know, it was really cool to see him get excited still about stuff. You know, I thought
Yeah.
he's not gonna like it. Yeah, what's this? But he was digging it too, you know, and so we were lucky to have that. You know, I feel like if I hadn't established that bond with him and he didn't have that encouragement from him, I don't know that I would have stayed with it. Because again, my mom kind of pushed me into it in the beginning,
Yeah.
so it took that to make me go, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so then you're playing with your fusion trio, your friends, you're playing at keg
Yeah.
parties. When did the first like gigs, you know, sideman gig, whatever, wedding bands, top 40,
Yeah.
when do those things happen with your friends, like the like real paying gigs? What's the first move?
The first professional gig that I did, there was a harmonica player, singer, great guy in San Jose named Andy Just. And Andy actually was in a band with Chris Kane. They used to play together. They had a band called the Walter Fields Band, which was named after Chris's father.
Hmm.
And Andy had a band around town. They were kind of a big, like, new wave rock band. But he's an amazing blues harp player and singer. And we met. I was just out of high school, and we had a mutual friend. And we met. And long story short, he wanted to put a band together to do more of like a Yardbirds kind of like blues rock kind of thing. And I was about 18, I think, and that was my first professional gig. And Andy was already established in the area, so you know, next thing you know, man, I'm like at the Keystone Palo Alto opening for the Paladins and John Lee Hooker and stuff like that with Andy. And I'm still a teenager, so I think you were a lot younger than I was when you were out gigging and stuff. I didn't really hit it until my late teens, you know. But uh, Andy Just, it was a band called Andy Just and the Shapes, and definitely a blues rock thing, not a traditional blues thing. But
Mm.
Andy had gigs, and we gigged all over the Bay Area, and that was where I started meeting players all around the Bay Area, not just because I'm from the South Bay, but we were up in San Francisco, we were in Marin, we were down in Monterey, we would go to LA occasionally. So that was my first professional gig, was playing with Andy. And that actually led to my first touring experience, which was with Patrick Ford, the
Yeah.
drummer, Charles Ford Band, and Robin's brother, and he played on
Hmm.
that Witherspoon album that Robin's on, and
Yep.
he had a band called the Ford Blues Band, and I ended up, because Andy played in that band, and Garth Weber was the guitar player, and then when Garth left, they
Yeah.
invited me to come in. So the Andy thing kind of led to hooking up with Pat, which led to some touring. But it all kind of commenced, I think, around 18 or so for me.
And what did your parents think when it started to become, paying? You're making some money, but you're not going to college. You're just out there working. What was their attitude?
Well, my mom was absolutely 100% on board, supportive. She loved the music I was playing. She loved. My dad was a little skeptical because my dad was an old. He was an army sergeant in Korea. He was pretty
Mhm.
old school, pretty hardcore. Didn't have a problem letting you know what he thought about stuff. And his father, like I said earlier, was a trumpet player who had to give up music and become a
Mhm.
mailman because he woke up one day and couldn't play, couldn't support himself. So my dad was a little skeptical at first. But then when I started gigging and he saw that I could actually make money doing it, then he kind of signed on. So I didn't get a lot of resistance. But in the beginning, my dad, he was, well, that's great, son, but you might want to think about going to school or whatever. And then
Right.
when I started getting a lot around town, and I got out of high school, I had like a gig. I was working at a record store, a couple of record stores, and I was working retail and stuff. And then I started gigging with Andy, and as soon as that band got so busy that I didn't need to go to work, then I stopped working when I was 19, and I've been really lucky to just do this ever since I was 19 for a living.
Yeah. Huh.
But it took my dad took a little convincing. My mom was totally on board with it.
Right. Well, that's cool. I mean, my grandparents were completely adamant, that no, 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 he's going to college. And my parents were
Yeah,
cool, but my grandparents, no way. But I
yeah.
somehow convinced them, somehow, or whether I
I'll
did or
bet you.
not, it wasn't changing anyways. So, yeah.
Are your folks still around?
Oh yeah, my folks are still around. They were incredibly supportive. I mean, I was playing in bars when I was 12 and 13, so one of them had to be with me at all times. And I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today without them driving me around and being there, and being 100% supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man.
You're lucky to
Very,
still have them, man.
oh yeah. Very, very lucky, man. Very lucky.
I
Um,
remember. I think I remember you came through San Jose and played at
oh
JJ's or
yes.
something when you
I
did, right?
absolutely played
Yeah.
JJ's as a teen. So my dad would have been with me for sure. I think the first time we played JJ's, I was 16 or 17. It was like, a summer break in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah, absolutely.
at that club, that little JJ's club, that was kind of where I cut my teeth too. That was where I was gigging with Andy, and when I first started playing gigs, it was there. And I remember you coming through there. I didn't see it, but I remember the name, and I
Yep.
remember. I think we talked about it later, and you told me that you
Yep.
were like a kid when you did that gig.
Oh yeah, I remember JJ's forever. Played there a couple times. It had that army surplus store next to it, and I remember always
Right.
going in there
The
to buy
mountain.
like some pins. I would buy like bomber nose art pins, like and stuff to put on my strap. I like that little store next
Yeah. Yeah, and there was a Guitar Center across the
across
street
the
later.
street. That's right, Guitar
I
Center across the street.
I saw Robert Collins play JJ's once, and he had 100-foot guitar cable, as you
Mm,
know, and he walked out into that street in the middle of Stevens Creek Boulevard, taking a solo. And I've never seen anything like it, man. I mean, it was just the entire club went outside, and he was standing in the street just pointing his guitar at cars as they would go by. It was unbelievable. I saw so many incredible shows there, man. That really was for me, that place. I mean, not only to play there, but I would go there during the week and hear
yeah.
guys like Chris. There was a great guy named John Garcia, who was a South Bay guy, a monster player. Used to play with Hooker. I used to go see him all the time. R.L. Burnside used to do a regular Tuesday thing there back before that Ass Pocket of Whiskey album where he kind of
Yeah,
got to be a big
the
deal.
Fat Possum stuff when he got
Yeah,
his
yeah, and he
rebirth.
would play
Yeah.
there. And there'd be me and like 2 or 3 other people checking it out, you know. But that was kind of part of my musical education too, was hanging out at JJ's and watching other cats play and just checking out the different styles and so that place was really important. It played an important role for me as well.
Well, so you started to get like, really in deep to the blues scene, and you're having guys call you and you're playing blues with different artists and touring. And, this is interesting to me because you're a very versatile musician who's listened to a lot of music, but yet you love the
Yeah,
blues and you treat it with a lot of reverence, but also you don't treat it like a museum. You still just play music, and this is something
yeah.
I've struggled with my whole life, this fight against, the blues purists and the blood, what's blues and what's this and that. How have you managed to, balance your love for all music and the knowledge that you have against, the love for keeping blues traditional, and some of those gigs you were on were pretty traditional gigs.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, in the case of a couple of them, there were some traditional blues purists who were not happy that I got the
Hmm.
gig. uh, I remember very vividly when the Musselwhite gig became available, and I there were a lot of cats around town. I didn't even know it was available. I was the way that I hooked up with Charlie Musselwhite was through Pat Ford,
Hmm.
and we played at a festival up in Northern California, and Henrietta, Charlie's wife, just happened to be at the festival, and we met, and she was very nice, and we hung out and talked, and she said, she mentioned that Charlie was looking for a guitar player, and so I got a call based on the fact that Henry just happened to see me play with
Yeah.
the Ford Blues, and so I was in the running. I didn't know about it. I wouldn't have probably gone for it because I just assumed that I'm too much of a rock guy for that gig. I probably wouldn't be into it. But at the time, Charlie, he had the Chicago guys who he'd been with, for a long time, like Felton and
Yeah.
Junior Boy Jones on guitar, and it was like a straight ahead kind of Chicago thing. And he, at the time that I met Henrietta, he was looking to fill his band with some players who could do some other stuff because he was kind of getting bored of just playing like Chicago shuffles all night and a slow blues and an occasional cha-cha. He wanted to do some other stuff. He was
Right.
kind of getting into jazz. He was getting into the Cuban thing. He was really getting into like world music. He was hanging out with Eliadas Ochoa and all these cats. And so he wanted to put a band together that could play anything he wanted. I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was he hired me to play a gig with him in Santa Cruz, and I played the gig. My guitar teacher came to the gig because he lived in Santa Cruz, and I got the gig. And then I found out later that there were some pretty heavy, like traditional blues guitar players that were trying hard to get that gig, and they were not happy that I got it because and I'm sure you've been through this, but like blues guys think I'm a rock guy because I play a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Rock guys, even here in Vegas, think I'm a blues guy, even though
Oh, yes.
like you know how it is, and we just play. To answer your question, I just play, man. I don't think about labels and stuff. I love blues and I listen to it and I study it and I'm a fan, but I love all sorts of music equally. And I've never, just spent all my time playing one thing. So, but it definitely doing gigs with people like Jimmy Witherspoon and Musselwhite and Lowell Fulson and guys like that. You catch a lot of flack, man. From I used to call it the bowling shirt community. Like
the
guys
bowling
with,
shirts. Yeah. Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nothing against them because they're all great players and stuff. But boy, they. I was a rock guy to them, and they just couldn't figure out why Charlie asked me to do it. And I was just like, man, I got lucky. I met Henry, and Charlie called me, and here I am. I mean, I was just happy to do it. And Charlie was very open-minded at the time about what he wanted, and of course, the history of guitar players in Charlie's band. I mean, I was just honored to be able to step into that.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, it's sort of worked against me in some cases because there are blues. I have this trio, and we just go balls out, and we'll play some blues, and then we'll go into some Zappa or some Zeppelin or whatever, and we're just like, screw it, man, let's just play music that we love. But then people would come down and go, well, this isn't really blues, this is it's too loud, it's too many notes and stuff, and it's like whatever. I mean, I just love music, man. I'm not into styles really.
Dude, I've been dealing with it basically my entire life and trying to be okay with, it. And it's funny you mentioned Jimmy Witherspoon. His playing Robin's records with him were important for this reason to me. Basically, I grew up, Albert King, Otis Rush, BB, that was my shit. And then Stevie Ray, Hendrix, that's what I'm listening to. And Robin, I didn't get right away because it was too smooth. He wasn't bending as many strings as Albert King, so I didn't get it. But I started listening to like Dizzy and Charlie Parker and getting into jazz, and then I heard that Jimmy Witherspoon record, and it was a big moment because it was like, wait a minute, this is that same guy that I just heard playing that slick version of Talk to Your Daughter, but he's playing like blues, and it's obvious he really knows his history and he respects it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's okay to start playing this other stuff that I'm hearing in the blues. It doesn't mean that I disrespect the blues in any way. Because up until then, it was like, you can't play that. You get indoctrinated into this cult of blues. And it was like, that record was important because it let me know, you know what? Fuck that. It's okay to play whatever you're hearing,
That's right. And Robin caught a lot of that same flack too, man, for that reason, because he was a little more harmonically sophisticated. But I mean, like you said, man, Robin is as deep into the blues as any musician out there. But I mean, he's got other stuff going on too. And Robin, for me, man, like Robin was a huge because there's this whole West Coast thing. Chris is one of them, and Robin obviously, and there's some other cats. There was a cat in San Jose named Sammy Varela, who guys who played like semi-hollow guitars and kind of did the blues thing, but had a bit of a jazz thing to it. And Robin, for me, man, like the Charles Ford Band. I saw the Charles Ford Band in '82. I was a sophomore in high school, and they played at the San Francisco Blues Festival. Gatemouth was on the bill. Little Charlie and the Nightcats were there.
Yeah.
It was an incredible bill. But I remember Robin came out, man. He had a Tobacco Sunburst 335. He had this little Yamaha like G50 or G100 sitting on a chair, and he plugged straight into that thing. And I mean, that's like some of the most incredible guitar I've ever heard, man. The tone and his attack and the feel. And so I understand that it's not traditional blues or whatever, but it spoke to me, man, because I was also listening to Wes and Pat Martino and Grant Green and cats like that. and listening to a lot of jazz like yourself, listening to Coltrane and Miles. And so it all made sense to me. I just went, oh, well, this guy's here, but he's also got some of this going on. And I've never been able to just get into one thing. I almost wish I could, I wish, I'm happy that I can play different things and I love different music, but I always think, man, if I could just spend 24/7 focusing on one thing, I feel like I could be really freaking good at it.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't be you.
Well, I would probably be bored just because
That
one day I
too.
want to listen to the Lonnie Johnson, and then the next day I want to listen to Soundgarden. You know what I mean? I'm just like
Yeah.
I just love so much music, and I never set out to be, I'm going to be a versatile guitar player. I literally just go through phases where I'll obsess over a certain style of music,
Yeah.
and I get
Yeah.
into it and I really get into it and study it. And then after a while I go, oh man, I'm really digging that Otis Rush record, and I want to start like checking that out, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm all over the map. But it in the end, like when I came to Vegas, it ended up serving me well. I didn't plan on it. I just, all of a sudden I came to town and realized I could play a bunch of different styles. So it meant that I could get different gigs in town, which was really a cool thing, but not planned whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the blues world is such a fascinating world to me because we self-police ourselves in this way that is just infuriating, you know? And it's always nice to I tend to gravitate towards players who are reverential about it, but also can say who gives a shit and will just play music. That's important to me, and that's obviously in your playing in spades.
Oh yeah, man. And there are guys who just do that, who are incredible, that I love to listen to. But like I get off on hearing somebody like yourself, much more, because I can hear some other shit going on too, man. I can hear Hendrix, I can hear Stevie, I can hear some jazz in there, and I like that, man. Just because I'm all over the map musically, I tend to get bored after a while. Even even as much as I love the blues, after a while I'm just like, I want to hear like a different flavor. And so
Absolutely.
I gravitate. That's why I dig Robin. That's why I dug Chris. Still dig Chris. Lyle is a totally different player. He's
Hmm.
come fusion and rock, and I get off on him just as much as I get off on you or Chris, and
Yep.
it's I love all of it, man. I really do. I've got musical ADD.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so you moved to Vegas then. What year did you move to Vegas?
Well, I officially moved here in 2006. Uh,
Okay.
I started I started coming here at the end of 2004. I was still living in San Jose, and there's a friend of mine who's a guitar player, singer in Southern California. His name is Gene Siegel, and he's a buddy of mine from San Jose, and we used to keep in touch. And my original plan was I wanted to move to LA, and Lyle told me, he said, hey man, if you come to town, I could recommend you for some stuff. So I thought, man, I got to get to LA because that's where it's all happening.
Right.
And late in 2004, I got a call from my buddy Gene, and he was playing in a cover band at the Mirage 5 nights a week. And they had just signed a contract, and it was, like every week, 5 nights a week. And he said, look, man, I'm really busy in LA. Would you be interested in splitting this gig with me? So I flew out and I met the band. I played a couple of weeks with him. And long story short, he ended up just basically like offering me his gig. Um, he said, hey man, I'm really busy. Well, why don't you just take this gig? So all of a sudden I'm living in San Jose and I'm gigging 5 nights a week in Vegas.
Right.
So I'm driving back and forth, and we're staying at the Mirage. And I never planned on moving here. Nobody ever plans on moving to Vegas. They go, oh, I'll
Right.
just go here for save up some money, do some gigs, whatever. And but I officially moved here in 2006, and I've been here ever since. But it was never the plan to move here. It was just I was just going to do this gig for a while, save up some money, and it was a sweet gig, man. I mean, it was like 3 hours a night, and we would be done. We'd be done at like 9:30, and we would go out and hear other bands, go eat dinner or whatever. And we were staying at the Mirage, and we were making good dough. And all of a sudden, I was like, man, I'm gigging 5 nights a week, and it was more of a classic rock kind of thing. So after coming from San Jose, after touring with Charlie for a long time and playing a lot of blues and stuff, all of a sudden, I was back into like playing classic rock and other kinds of music. So it was a challenge musically, but the thing that brought me here was a gig. And And I remember very vividly that because the plan was, well, I'll do this for a year or two, and then I'll go to LA and I'll seek my fortune, you know, in LA. And there was one night, the Ronnie Foster, the keyboard player, was doing a regular gig here in town. Drew Zing was playing guitar, by the way, another hero.
Okay, yeah.
You should get him on your show, man. That guy.
You're right.
Whew,
You're right. Yeah.
you hit, right?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so Drew was playing guitar, so I used to go down there every Thursday. And one night, Brandon Fields came in to sit in,
Yeah.
and he was in town playing Barry Manilow, and so he pulled out his horn and played and was killing. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, man, you know, I'm a huge fan, and you know," and I said, "What are you doing in Vegas?" And he said, "I live here now." And I went, "What do you mean you live? I thought you lived in LA." He goes, "No," he goes, "I was, but I wasn't working there, so I'm here now." And I said, "Man," I go, "that's really funny that you say that, because I've been thinking about getting out of here and going to LA." And he said, "Are you working here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm working quite a bit." And he goes, "Stay here." He said, "There ain't shit going on in LA right now." And I'm thinking, if Brandon Fields is saying this to me, like, I better listen. I drove home that night and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to stay my ass here. But so I ended up here. It's been, 14 years that I've been living here officially.
Yeah.
And I love it here, man. And I know that Vegas kind of has a reputation as like, this is where, cats who can't get a gig anymore come. Man, these days it's a whole other thing. There's world-class musicians living here.
Oh yeah.
And
Everybody's moving there because it's one of the last bastions of weekly gigging, being able to play a bunch of nights every week. That just doesn't exist anywhere anymore.
and especially even before the coronavirus, I mean, like at the time, before the world blew up, like this was the last place you could go and make a living in town playing gigs.
Yeah.
I read an article once about Vegas and about the music scene here and about musicians moving here, and they called Las Vegas a stationary tour bus, meaning that you can make road money and sleep in your own bed every night, like go home at night, but you can make the kind of money you would normally make on the road. And so, and it's really true. And even now, even with things as crazy as there are, there's still gigs to be had. There are lots of different kinds of gigs here. If you read, you can do, you can play, orchestra gigs, you can play, showrooms.
Yeah.
There's lounge gigs, you can do covers. There's really not much of a blues scene here. There are some amazing blues musicians that live here. Like Junior Brantley lives here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great guitar player, Chris Tofield, here in town. I mean, there's some monster players here, but there's just not a lot of blues gigs. That's the one thing that's a little bit lacking here. But overall, if you can play different styles, if you can read, if you can, then, and if you're, halfway professional,
Right.
you can work here, And
Yeah.
I was lucky that I play a lot of different styles, so I was able to jump into like a bunch of different stuff. But the plan was never to move to Vegas, but I got to say, man, I'm really proud to live here, and I would hold the scene up to any other place, man, because there are musicians here that are just, of the highest caliber.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. All right. Let's get into the 10 questions.
yes.
All right. Here we go. Number 1. When you started learning and playing, what was the first thing that when you figured it out, you got it under your fingers, it was like, I can't believe I just figured this out, and it set that hook forever? I'm assuming it had to be Zeppelin, but I don't know. Let's see what
No,
you see.
you would assume correctly, my friend.
Yeah.
It really was. And I can't say that I sat down and figured it out, but my teacher showed it to me. There were 2 riffs in particular. The first, can you hear this?
Yes, sir.
The first one was.
Yeah.
That one, I think that was the first one he showed me. And that one, like, yeah, that floored me. I was just like, I can't believe I can play that riff. But then the one that was a little more involved was. That whole thing. Learning that whole intro thing, man, I think that was probably the first like full piece of music that I learned how to play, other than stuff in Mel Bay. I knew how to play rondo and
Right.
stuff in Mel Bay, Volume 1. But I think probably Over the Hills and Far Away
Yeah.
was probably the first kind of piece of music that I learned. Live and Love and Made, I just learned the riff, and
Right.
that was it. He just did that to send me home with something, but he actually he taught me Over the Hills and Far Away, and then from there I kind of learned all the rest of them.
Well, I mean,
I was
but
hooked.
that's the kind of thing, yeah. When you get that, the pride that happens as a kid when you nail that part, and it's something you've listened to a million times,
I know.
that's it. It's
I
like
know.
you're hooked forever. There's no going
It's
back.
it's, it's like putting the needle in the arm. You know, it's like you are absolutely hooked. And I know you feel the same way I do, man. I feel exactly like that today when
Yep.
I learn something new or something cool, man. It's just like I remember, oh my God, this is why I do this, you know?
Yep. Yep. I was
And,
literally I was sitting in front of the TV in the house yesterday, and I don't play in the house anymore because I've got the studio. But I brought a guitar
right.
in the house yesterday because I was kind of shedding, and I was sitting there watching TV late last night, and I had like a little breakthrough moment of something cool I was working on. And my wife walked out and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm practicing." She's like, "What?" I said, "No, I'm practicing. In fact, I just brushed down a wall. It's really awesome. I feel great, you know?" Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, leave me alone. I'm busting down the wall. That's
Yeah.
great.
It feels that way. I love that. That feeling is what makes me work hard every day because I want that feeling all the time.
Yeah, oh, me too. And you know what's interesting about this whole shutdown, world blowing up thing. And I don't know if you've encountered this, but I have people that I know who have literally not touched their instrument the entire time
Yeah.
that this has been going on, and they're just like, man, I'm done with music. I haven't touched my guitar in 6 months. I know people who haven't left the house since March,
Yep.
haven't played, and are turning down gigs. And it's a weird thing, and this whole episode that we're going through right now has been a real revealing thing to me about my friends who are genuinely in love with music and my friends who just want to get gigs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've encountered that over there in LA, but
I
I'm seeing a
have
lot of that.
I have to some degree, but also I'll admit it's been cyclical even for me. I mean, I've spent the first month I didn't want to play that much, and for me not wanting to play that much means I might go 2 days without playing a guitar. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
monumental for me. I never skip a day ever in 35 years, so
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like that at the beginning. It was just this weird malaise, that you couldn't get over.
Man, I didn't go through that. I actually went the other way. I thought, man, I finally got some time to do
Yeah.
a little shed, and doing what I'm doing. I mean, what you're doing, I love what you're doing because you're doing your thing. You got your studio. You're making records. You're pursuing your thing. You're writing tunes.
Yeah.
My thing here in town is I'm playing gigs and I'm doing other people's music, which is great and rewarding. But I find myself going, man, one of these days I really got to sit down and work on that. But right now I got to learn these tunes for this rehearsal tomorrow.
Right, right.
When the virus thing hit, all of a sudden I went, I had no excuse, and I went, man, I can finally sit down and focus on some stuff that I've been meaning to get to. And I remember I saw this video of John McLaughlin, like right in the beginning of the pandemic, and when the world got shut down, and he was sitting there with a guitar, killing, and then he said to everybody, he goes, look, he says, take advantage of this gift of time, and he said it was an unexpected gift of time. That was how he put it, and that kind of resonated with me. I thought, yeah, man, I have no excuse now. I need to be hitting the shed. All this
Yeah.
shit that I've been saying I'm going to get to, like I can start getting to it.
Yep. Yep.
So for me, it was just like from day one, it was just all right. Well, I'm gonna hit the shed then. If I can't go out and play, all my gigs are canceled. Everything's put on hold until at least the end of the year, and now probably
Yep.
next year. So man, I'm gonna try and take advantage of it. But I'm not saying my way is the right way, but I've just been fascinated by how my friends, my musician friends, have reacted to this thing,
Yeah.
and some of them really hit it hard, and then other people are like, I haven't played in 6 months, and
Yeah, everybody's handled it in a different way. Like for me, it
yeah,
took it took a little like push, kick in the butt. So about a month into the thing, that first month, like I said, I would go a couple days without playing, And then I got through that but got back to normal. Then I revisited my Barry Harris book, and it was like, oh, that kicked me in the butt for the next 2 months. And I was like shedding hard on that stuff. And it's funny, like I talked to Scott Henderson the other day, and he said he's never shedded as hard as he has been during this pandemic. Like I'm like, dude,
Well,
you already fucking know everything. What the hell? But he's
you need,
he's been
you
shedding
need to
really
tell me
hard.
the records he's put out recently, he didn't
Yeah.
shed for, because I can't imagine what it's going to sound like now.
I know. He's working on a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
it's hey, let me turn that question around on you. The original question, though, like, what was the first thing you figured out lit the fire?
Well, the first thing I ever learned was Michelle by the Beatles. Da da da
Okay.
da 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 da. But the first thing that, like, when I figured it out and set the hook was BB King intro to a slow blues. The first time I
Yeah,
actually could play, it was like, yep, I'm good. I'm good. I'll just do that for the rest of
yeah,
my life. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
because it was
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
live at the Rio, man.
yeah,
I eat
yeah.
that shit up.
It might have been Live at the Regal. It might have been Blues is King. We had both of them, and I
Ah,
listened to both a lot. But I don't know. For some
yeah,
reason, it's my own fault on Live at the Regal was always my, like, that was my one. Like, it's just so good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
gosh, it's
yeah.
yeah, and I still find myself about every 6 months. I don't know if you do this, but like sometimes I need like a palate cleanser. You know what I mean? Like I need to, like I'm involved in like different kinds of music, and I go, man,
Yeah,
I just need to reset and like start over. And that's one of the go-to albums for me.
yeah, yeah,
Is Live at the Regal. Maybe it's because it was the first blues album that I heard, but man, when
yeah.
I listen to that, I start trying to maybe shed like some pointy-headed, fusion stuff or something, and then all of a sudden I listen to Live at the Regal and I go, nah, I don't really need to worry about that, man.
It's
This
just
is the
like
shit right
taking
here.
it's like taking a breath. It really is. It's just like,
Yeah,
that's the way I
I
feel every
know,
time
and
I hear it. Every time I hear Albert King, Live Wire Blues Power, or even Pretty
yeah,
Woman comes on, or Personal Manager, or anything. When it's like,
yeah,
it's just a reset button. Albert King's the thing I still listen to pretty much every day of my life. At least one song.
yeah,
It just
yeah.
happens. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I was just listening to "If the Washing Don't Get You" when I was driving home today.
Woo! Yes. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Albert's another one too. I mean, any of the three kings for sure. But
Yeah.
there are just some handful of players that I just go, okay, man, I'm just gonna start over. Like I need to stop worrying about playing over these changes or whatever, and I just need to like listen to how much gravity one note can hold.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. You're right.
And of course, I get the guitar in my hand and I overplay, so it never
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. All right. Number two. What's the
Yeah.
first solo you ever learned note for note?
Well, I think we just talked about it. I think it was probably "Sweet Little Angel," and I actually I can't remember if I learned the entire solo, uh, but I very vividly remember that record, and there were a couple of things on there that I just never heard before, like that thing, like that. I'd never heard that before because I was listening to Angus Young and Joe Perry and Jimmy Page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that solo might have been the first one that I sat down and tried to learn. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I would go back to my lesson and I would play a little bit of it, and he would say, "Yeah, man, that's it,"
Mm.
And but even today, I've never been somebody who learns entire solos. I usually just grab like a couple of phrases
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
and then go from there. I don't know about you. Do you transcribe whole solos?
No. No. But when I was a kid, I would. I had a weird thing where I would try to find solos that had two choruses to them, and I would play the first note for note, and I would take the second chorus as myself. And it was so weird. I'd play along to the record like that. A teacher told me to do that, and it stuck. So I remember vividly, like, listening to Allman Brothers' Statesboro Blues and taking the first and then going off on my own. Whatever, but I used to purposely, like, I would start the solo like the guy and then go my own way. Yeah.
Dude, that now.
Yeah.
It's funny. I never thought about it until you just said it, but I actually do that now. Like there'll be a phrase and I'll go, man, I got to figure out what that was. And then I get it. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, oh my God, I got all this new stuff. And I stop listening to the original solo and I start noodling over it
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
I definitely pick out phrases, but I think probably the closest that I came to learning an entire solo in the beginning for me was probably Sweet Little Angel live at the Regal.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's, like Stevie, I'll go the rest of my life and be able to basically recall any of those solos note for note. And it's not even because I used to just play them all the time. It's because they're in here. I've just listened to them so many times
Osmo.
that they will come out, all of them, or Hendrix. Yeah. I mean, but the one that's you mentioned Angus Young. You Shook Me All Night Long was one that I remember learning note for note, like because it
Oh,
was
that's
a great
great.
melodic solo. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and actually, one of the early solos that I learned. You remember that song, "The Jack," which was like a slow blues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, that tune, man, the solo he takes on the live version, "If You Want Blood, You Got It." That was an album that like one of my favorite records early on was "If You Want Blood, You Got It." It's the one where he's got the SG sticking out of his chest on the
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah.
Man, dude, when we hang up, man, like go to Spotify or whatever and check out the solo on the Jack. It's just ridiculous, man. It's just so much attitude and the vibrato and its tone,
Yeah.
and that was another one that I learned too, and a bunch of stuff. When I figured out how to start transcribing and picking solos off of records, man, I ate up that live AC/DC record, and
Yeah.
I guess maybe because it was so bluesy, compared to like some of the
Well, it
other stuff
was.
I
It
was.
was. It had attitude, but it was bluesy. It was easy to figure out,
Yeah,
because it wasn't anything like crazy out there in there. It was just. It
no,
was. It was a. It's a perfect storm of like beginning. Not beginning, but like root coming up as a guitar player is perfect things to work on. Absolutely.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then when you factor in the fact that he's running around and shaking his head and while he's playing it, and I listen to it now, and there's like so much control and attitude. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, how did he do all that at once?
Yeah.
But
The
in fact,
vibrato, man.
I got to show you this real quick. This is my very first electric guitar. Look at this.
Ah. Wow. Yeah.
It looks
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
not a Gibson. It's just like a cheap copy. But
Yeah.
I was so into Angus at the time that I got this guitar because it looked just like his.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so definitely BB, and then those work tapes that I was telling you about, like I'd check out like Hideaway or Killing Floor or something like that, and I would cop stuff from those tapes because it was just a sampler, and I'd go, man, who's that guy? And then I would go in and I'd say, man, I really like this guy Hubert Sumlin, and then he'd bring me in all these Wolf records, but yeah,
That's a hip
I think
teacher,
early on,
man. That's a hip teacher.
dude, he was super hip, man, and a really, really good player, really understated. Like if you heard him play, I'll send you a couple of videos of him playing. It's not like, gonna turn your head around or anything, but real subtle and understated, real shy dude, like didn't want any attention. Like he would turn down offers to join bands and stuff, but he had a real gift for teaching. And,
Nice.
and yeah, so anyway, probably something off of Live at the Regal would have been the closest I came to my
Right.
first full transcribed solo, I'm guessing.
All right. Number 3. What's the first thing you play when you pick up a guitar? Do you have somewhere your hands just go there automatically? Or like when you're trying out a guitar, do you have like a little pet thing that you do that, lets you know if this guitar works for you or not?
It's so funny because I never thought about it before, but I usually almost always start out playing a chord or two. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I like this chord a lot. It's like, I don't know, it's like a major 7 add 9 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it is major 7 and 9. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I'll always play like some stuff with open strings just to see if the thing's in tune. But this one, for some reason, I find myself like, I don't know why my hand just goes there.
Yeah.
And there's another one that I just remember that I always play, which is a Roy Buchanan lick. off of the first Roy Buchanan record. This is. Remember that one?
Oh yes, that's a killer.
Yeah. I always, for some reason, like I'll play some chords. Okay, it sounds nice and warm and stuff, and then you go down to the treble pickup and that's just that record. I don't know, for some reason that's like my go-to. Like, let's see how the high end sounds on this.
Yeah. Well, man.
I mean, there are a ton of them, but those two pop immediately into mind.
Nice. Yeah, Roy was big for me on the treble side and then just the bending side. He was just a huge influence on melodic bending. Like I still think he's criminally underrated. Like he was truly like one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely, totally underrated. And man, I mean the pinch harmonic thing. I mean the tone, that nasal, that laser beam kind of telly thing, but the steel bends really messed me up when I was a kid, man. Like I didn't know what the hell that was, and then I consequently, as a result of that, I started getting into steel guitar. I was just like, holy crap, and then I discovered Buddy Emmons and stuff like that. But Roy and the band that I was playing with Andy Just, we opened for Roy one time at a place in California called OT Prices. And I remember we had to bring him a Marshall half stack to play through, and he played so loud, it was unbelievable. God damn, he was great. I mean, it was like it was really freaking loud.
This was during when he was on Alligator period.
Yeah, it was around the time of that When a Guitar Plays the Blues.
When a Guitar Plays the Blues, yeah.
It would have been late 80s, maybe 88, 89.
Yeah.
And we opened for him, and of course I was in awe, man. I had him sign the first two albums, Roy Buchanan's second album and the first record. Had him sign it, and I mean, I was just in awe of the guy. He was very kind of like quiet and dark. He was nice, but you could tell he was a little bit of a kind of a troubled soul,
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
But man, he went it was fucking on, man. Yeah. I was really lucky that I got to see him play. Did you ever see him play live?
I never saw him play. No, I missed him. I missed Danny Gatton, and I mean, and these guys are huge influences on me, and I never got to see him.
Yeah. Did you? I meant to ask you this because I know we were talking about Stevie. Did you ever get to see Stevie?
I didn't get to see Stevie. I was 10 when he passed, and I kind of turned down an opportunity. He was coming to town with Jeff Beck on one of his last tours, and
Guitar Shop.
Yeah, but I was 9 years old, and my dad said, "Do you want to go see Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck?" And I said no, but I didn't even know what I was saying no to, really. I just missed it. That was a mistake on my part.
I saw that tour. They came to Oakland, and I went and saw that. And Jeff opened, and he came out and did 45 minutes. And as much as I love Stevie, man, like after Jeff was done. I mean, Stevie came out and he was killing, man. Stevie, and I'll tell you more about seeing Stevie in a second. But that night, man, Jeff, he absolutely just floored everybody. And then Stevie came out and Stevie was killing. But this is a funny story about that show. I remember Carlos Santana came out and sat in. We all were hanging out thinking Jeff was going to come play with Stevie. So we were really like, me and my buddies, we were like big Jeff Beck guys, and we were like, oh man, is he going to hang out? Is he going to play? And Jeff had already left, apparently, but Carlos came out, and I probably shouldn't even tell this story, but I'm there were like 60,000 other people there, so I'm not the only one. But Stevie came out and picked up, Carlos came out and picked up one of Stevie's guitars with the 15s on it, and he could not play that guitar, man. And I mean, and he uses really light strings.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, he couldn't bend a note. And finally, to his credit, he just laid back and he just went, go ahead. And he just sat there and played rhythm because he couldn't play Stevie's guitar, man. I mean, those strings were so heavy, and he walked out and like grabbed his Strat and couldn't play it, man. It was a trip. Yeah. But I had a good friend of mine in San Jose who was a tour manager for the T-Birds, and he got the gig with Stevie Ray Vaughan. And so he called me and said, "Hey, man, you know, Stevie Ray's playing at Redwood Amphitheater, which was at an amusement park in the South Bay." And he said, "You want to come check it out?" And I got to say, man, I dug Stevie, but I didn't get it until that night. And I went to see him, man, and I sat like on the side of the stage, and it was just the four of them with Reese, and you know, I couldn't believe the power that was coming out of that. And I went home that night and went, all right, man, I totally get it now. Because he was another guy, you know, at the time, the blues guys were hating on him because he said he was a rock guy. Because he played so many notes, you know? Oh,
Yeah,
he's a
but
rock
talk
guy.
about somebody
You know?
who loved the blues and respected the blues and knew his shit. That's why it drives me
Yeah,
crazy when guys say he's not a blues player. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, come on. Yeah.
I know. I've always interpreted that as kind of a low grade jealousy thing. You know what I mean? I mean, because these guys were like, almost, you could almost hear in their voice, they'd be like, well, that should be me making all that money. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
more than, you know, I mean, because man, I mean, there was nobody more legit and nobody who did more for those cats than Stevie, you know.
Absolutely.
But boy, back then they were talking shit and they were saying, oh, he's a rock guy, you know, he's a flashy guy, and this and that.
Yeah.
And of course now everybody, you know, he's revered.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time, you know, because I was kind of more into like, you know, Robin and Kane and guys like that were playing. And when I went and saw Stevie that night, man, it messed me up, I got to say. And I got to meet him, which was super cool. I got to meet him twice and shook his hand. And it was like, you know, a vice grip, man. His hands were so strong. And he was just the sweetest. He was as sweet as you know he was, as you've heard everybody
Yeah.
say. And I know you're friends with Chris and all those guys, but I mean, he really was that dude, man. And I was really lucky to get to see him play and to get to meet him twice.
That's awesome.
And I became a fan, a huge fan after seeing him that night at the Redwood Amphitheater. And I saw him again at the Concord Pavilion, and he brought out Larry Davis, who wrote
Yeah,
Texas
Texas
Flood.
Flood. Yeah.
And Larry came out and sang with him, and I met his fiance, Stevie's fiance that night, the French
Yeah.
girl,
Yeah, Jana
and he was,
from New Zealand.
yeah, right, right. Oh, was that okay?
Yeah.
But he, you know, I met her briefly that night, but again, my buddy was the tour manager, so he got me in, and then he was gone shortly after that. But I mean, I was just so grateful to get to see him play, and finally it dawned on me. You know, I went, all right, now I fucking get it, and I became like a huge fan. But at the time, I was just I was kind of into other stuff, and when I first heard Stevie, it was like there's Albert King and there's Hendrix. You know, when I first heard Texas Flood, it sounded like some Hendrix outtakes or something, you know. But man, around the time of like In Step and stuff, all of a sudden like everything kind of lined up for me, and I went, yeah, all right, I
Nice.
totally get it now.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. All right, number 4. What key, style, song, groove do you hear? What in your head just all day long as you're, you know, noodling around, driving the car, cooking dinner? Do you have like just a groove that plays? Mine is a shuffle, always a shuffle. Normally in
I'm
B
with you,
flat. Yeah.
dude. You just answered for me.
Yeah.
Shuffle, definitely B flat. I seem to be a fan of the Black Keys. You know, I seem to be a fan of like B flat, C sharp.
Yeah.
I love F. I love sharp. I like the keys that sax players hate sometimes. You know, when you're
Right.
on a gig, they were
Yeah.
gonna and not C sharp where you're tuned down a half step playing in D, but like I actually like playing in C sharp. You
Me too.
know, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is. There was a Dixie Dregs song. It was a Dregs song called Rock and Roll Park. I don't know. And that was it. That was like the first song I learned in C sharp, and I love that key. But I'm with you, man. Shuffle all day long. Like that's sort of the heartbeat, I think, of all the music that I love. I'm with you. I love B flat. I have to say that I really love a good second line.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a sucker for a second line, man. And if I'm sitting around just kind of noodling and trying to play funky, I always in my head I'm hearing like Johnny Vodakovich on drums or something
Yeah.
playing like
Yeah.
you know,
There's just something about any kind of syncopated groove like that, you know. It's there's for me as an improviser besides a shuffle, That's my second favorite thing to improvise over. Is something like
Yeah.
that that's syncopated and moving around. You know, it's just
Yep.
you've got all these nooks and crannies to kind of get in and out of. You know.
Yeah, and you can just really sink your teeth into it, man. And you don't have to play a lot. You
No.
know, you can just play like, you know, like Leo Nascitelli, man, just that real simple double stop stuff,
Yeah.
and it just works when the groove is happening like that. Um, yeah, I think my runner up would definitely be a second line.
All right. Nice.
Um, but yeah, I'm with you, man. The B flat shuffle all day long,
All day long. All day long.
all day
Oh.
long.
All right, number 5. When did you feel like you started to find your voice on the instrument? Was there a moment where something happened and you felt like, oh, I should go further down this path? This feels right to me.
Well, I have to say that I don't know that I have found my own voice. Um, I feel like the way I play is sort of an amalgamation of like all this different stuff that I like, and I go through phases where sometimes I think, you know, I'm hitting on something, and then I go, nah, that just sounds like, you know, it sounds like Albert Kane or whatever, you know. So I don't know that I've had that revelation yet, where I feel like, oh man, that you know, that's not like me. Although I've become really good at sort of fitting into lots of different musical situations, and then I can, you know, kind of sound like myself. Like if I'm doing like a pop gig and I get a solo and I play like some bluesy stuff in it, you know, I feel like, well, that's a little unique as opposed to just, you know, playing the what would normally be there, or vice versa, you know, on a blues gig, playing like some rock stuff. But I don't know that I have my own voice, man, and I guess that's sort of like the golden ring for me would be, you know, I mean, some of the guys we talked about tonight, man, like Stevie and even Carlos, and you hear one or two notes and you go, there he is, that's Carlos,
One or
you know,
two, yeah,
BB
one or
King,
two notes, yeah.
Albert, yeah, and that's, to me, that's like the hardest thing in the world. I don't think I'm even near there yet.
Ah, man, you've got your own voice on the instrument, and it's a mix of all your experience and your influences. But you know, I know when I hear you play, you know what you
Oh,
sound like.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that, man, and coming from you, because I'm a huge fan of yours, and I feel like we kind of are coming from the same place where we love a lot of music and we just
Yes.
play what we love, and we don't really pay attention to like categories and stuff. I don't
Mhm.
mean to I don't mean to dodge the question. I can't really think of a moment where I went, oh man, that sounds like me. But there are times like on a session maybe or on a gig where I'll
Mhm.
play something and I'll go like, okay, I feel like that was really unique
Yeah.
for the context, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had moments like that quite a bit. Like on the Righteous Brothers gig, um, Bill Medley does a blues thing in the show, and Bill, by the way, you know, huge blues nut. I mean, just way into it. And we do a blues thing in there, and it was really fun for me to like kind of do my thing in the context of a Righteous Brothers concert and a blues song going on in that concert. And there were some times doing that solo with Bill where I felt like, oh, okay. And I wasn't even on this guitar. I was playing a Strat, you know, which is not my most comfortable guitar to play. But there were
Right.
some times there where I felt like, okay, well, I probably walked away from there feeling like that was unique, you know, and that's probably about the coolest thing I could hope for, is to like play something that maybe isn't expected or isn't the norm
Mhm.
in a given situation.
All right. All right. Good answer. Good answer. Number 6. What do you think is your biggest weakness on the instrument?
Woo! There's so many.
Oh, come on.
No, I mean seriously, there's so many things. I would say, I know after we hang up, I'm gonna think, oh, I should have said this. Travis picking.
Yeah.
That's pretty specific, I know, but I have always been a huge fan of Chet Atkins, Merle Travis, that kind of like with the thumb pick, the
Mhm.
alternating bass thing, you know. I mean, I listen to Chet. I mean, my guitar teacher turned me on to Chet, and I listen to that stuff, and it's like a one-man symphony, you know, and it's so beautiful. It's not like aggressive. It's just gentle and classy, and there's one note out of place. And I've always told myself that I was going to sit down and really learn how to Travis pick. Now, I can kind of get through it, and I've done gigs with it. I've done sessions with it where I can do enough that people think I know what I'm doing. But I've always meant one day to sit down and really spend some time. In fact, that was the thing I told myself I was going to do when the Rona hit. I was going to sit down and learn how to Travis pick properly, you know. But that's something that I've always wanted to do. That and classical guitar, like proper classical guitar, instead of just, you know, hybrid, you know, bullshit like imitating Steve Howe kind of classical guitar.
Right.
Like I've always wanted to study properly, you know, the right hand technique and learn how to do that. And I still feel like one day I'm going to do both of those things. But yeah, definitely Travis picking and classical guitar are two things. And I heard you talking about this with blues. I'm actually really comfortable on acoustic guitar and like arpeggios and stuff like that. But very specifically, the Travis thing just is vexing me. And there are guys that are incredible at it.
Oh, that would be a weakness for me too, Travis picking. You know, and it's funny, I hybrid pick so much, but the alternating bass line thing, it's not something I've ever spent a ton of time on, you know? And yeah, I've listened to Chet Atkins my whole freaking life, but it wasn't something I ever just sat down and forced myself to do. Yeah.
Right. And I haven't, I've spent some time with it just to shed for gigs and stuff, but I haven't really sat down and gotten it under my hands to where I can just do it subconsciously, you know, yeah, it's just something that I love, and it's some of my favorite guitar is music that I've heard is Chet playing solo guitar. You know, those early RCA records, man. I swear I hear that stuff and I just get goosebumps, and I just go, God, I got to learn how to do that. And one of these days, I swear I'm going to buy a Tennessean or a Country Gentleman or something, and I'm going to spend a year and just, you know, I should have done it. I could have been 7 months into it by now, but
you could have been in it.
I know, and that was the plan. I'm telling you, it was. And then classical guitar too. I always early on, I wanted to study classical and learn how to properly play, because that's another style that I just love and I listen to, and it just kind of baffles me, you know. And I can play a little bit, but not at all near the level that I want to be. So, you know, one day.
Nice. All right. Well, number 7 is, who's a big influence on your playing that people would be surprised to hear?
Boy. Oh, there's so many. Gosh.
But a real, like, out of left field one.
Johnny Moore.
Okay. All right.
Are you hip Johnny Moore?
Yes,
sure.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. That's stuff that he did with Charles Brown and like the Three Blazers and stuff.
Yeah.
That's like I was saying earlier about the palate cleansers. That's one of those things that I go to, like if I have a blues gig and I'm kind of shedding for it or something, you know, in addition to listening to Albert and Beattie and Freddie and stuff like that. Johnny Moore, to me, it's just this smooth and melodic. One of the players that my teacher turned me on to early on was Charlie Christian. He gave me a copy of Soul Flight, that Charlie Christian album, the double album. And I fell in love with that kind of melodic, like not one outside note, just, you know, every note is inside and melodic and everything. And Johnny, I don't know, man, there's something about his tone and it's just so slippery and just it's very bluesy, but it's also kind of got one foot in the jazz world.
And there's no notes out of place. It's so like in place. It's just, yeah.
I just love, and he's another guy I listen to and I go, oh man, I don't have to be playing all this stuff. You know, it's just, and the note selection is just mind blowing to me. It might not be that far left field, I guess, from what we've been talking about, but he's a guy that not too many people talk about, that I really listen to a lot. And I love, and every once in a while I'll just sit down and cop a few licks, and then that will sort of, you know, keep me going. But I mean, I can go down the list. I mean, if you want to go left field from there, Brian May is a huge guy for me.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really play like that at all, but I feel like he's just one of the unsung rock guitar geniuses. He should be on Mount Rushmore for me, man. I mean, just the guitar orchestrations alone. I don't know if you ever heard, like on the Night at the Opera, there's this tune called Good Company where he does like a Dixieland band with all guitars.
Yeah.
And like that stuff, I hear that stuff and I swear, man, it's one of a kind. His
Totally
tone is completely one of a kind. And the other thing that really influenced me about Brian, because I was a huge fan, I got to see Queen. This is one of the advantages of being an old guy. I got to see Queen with Freddie. And I saw it 2 nights in Oakland when they played, and this is an interesting story. The Blasters opened the show.
Wow.
And got booed off stage.
I could kind of see that, actually. Not the same audience.
But I loved them. I went out and bought their records the next day. I freaking
I love them too, but that's a weird audience. That's a weird bill.
It was a weird bill, and people didn't know. I was just recently reading about that tour, and they said that Brian May would go out on stage and basically scold the audience and say, look, you guys, these are our friends. We want you to check them out. Like, be polite. Because people were booing them. But I saw them 2 nights in a row in Oakland. And Brian, I swear, man, it's just – and the thing that has really influenced me when it comes to recording is how he did all that stuff with a little tiny amp about this big. Yeah. And he was one of the first people that kind of turned me on to the idea of recording with small amps. And I used to listen to those Queen records, and I would think, he's got a wall. Like inside this album, Jazz, you open it up, and there's like just a bunch of Vox amps all over the place. But it turns out
tons and tons of them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's got a wall of them on stage, but it turns out he's only using 3 of them.
Yeah.
And because I know people who like have worked the stage when they play, and they go, yeah, there's 3 of them, and they're each mic'd up, and then there's a wall of kind of dummy amps. But most of those records were recorded with this little teeny tiny amp, and I've learned a lot about that when I'm recording at home and stuff. As far as like layering guitars and stuff, man, like recording with a small amp, that was the thing that I definitely learned from Brian May. Mm-hmm. So he not only do I just love everything he plays, and I love the music, but I also love that it was just completely his voice and totally he built his own guitar. The amp was built by their bass player out of like parts.
The Deaky. Yeah.
The Deaky. I've got a little replica of one over here, one of the Vox ones they put, and I just absolutely one of a kind genius rock guitar. So there's 2.
Nice, man. All right. Would you rather have a good guitar and a terrible amp, or vice versa? A great amp and a shitty guitar.
Now I heard you talk about this with blues and also with Oz Noy this morning.
Everybody's been split. It's been 50-50.
And now I thought you said that most people were going the other way with the guitar.
No? It's gotten to be about split now. I think I've done 20 and it's been split. But I'm always amp. I'll go with the amp. Well, but where are you?
Right. I heard you say that. I think I could make a case for both. But I think if I have to pick one, and I hate to go the other way, but I think I would go with I'd rather have this guitar and play through a shitty amp. And the reason, because I thought about this question, because I thought you might ask it. Early on when I was touring with Pat Ford, and I was like 19, 20, no, I was about 21, I guess, when we did our first tour. We went to England.
Right.
And I didn't know shit. I didn't know anything about touring. I didn't know anything about the road. And I just assumed, at the time I was using a Mesa Boogie Mark III. I still have the head here. That was my amp. So I didn't need any pedals. Pedals weren't even a big deal then anyway. I had channel switching. I had way more gain than I would need. So I just went, all right, well, I'm going to ask for a Mark III every night that we play in England, right? And they'll just have one for me. It'll be magic,
Right.
And I got out on the road with this guitar, no pedals, and man, every single night was just an absolute shit show of amps. The only Mesa Boogie I saw the entire tour was a 22 caliber, and we were playing freaking loud, man. Yeah. And that amp, it just was, and so I had to force myself on that tour to, I'm like, all right, we're playing to like, festival crowds and stuff. I'm like, I can't fuck this up. So I've got to figure out a way to make this work with this guitar, you know? And it was hell. I mean, it was long nights for me, and it was one of the biggest learning experiences ever. But I also think that it instilled in me the notion that if I have this guitar that I love and I feel connected with, anything else can happen, really. And I guess I'm just more connected with this than I am with electronics, really. Of course, these days, you know, I take pedals everywhere like we all do, and we just,
Yeah.
but, you know, even on the road with the Righteous Brothers, you know, getting Fender amps, you get twins and deluxes, and that's a crapshoot every night.
Every night.
Every night, you know, so if I'm happy with the guitar, and, you know, I'll bring an overdrive pedal or a tremolo pedal or something that I like, I can get through a bad amp. But for me, if I had like a Squire Strat with like 8s on it and low action, man, that would be hell for me. I'd much rather have a guitar that I'm connected to and take my chances with the amp.
I hear you. I am the opposite, but I agree.
I do it too, dude.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. I mean, ideally, you know, we should have both, but
right. Yes. Yeah. In an ideal world, yes.
Yeah, in an ideal world, we should have both, and I could make a case for the other side of it too. I totally get where you're coming from on that, but I think if I was being honest with myself and with you, I would say, man, if I have this guitar, I can plug into anything and at least be comfortable here.
Yeah.
And if the amp sucks, you know, I mean, it's like, well, I'll do the best I can with it, but at least I feel like you know, I'm connected to this.
By the way, what year and where did you get that guitar? What year did you buy it and where?
Okay, this guitar is this is an '85.
Right. I figured it was around there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought it brand new.
Well, you did buy it brand new. Okay.
I bought it brand new at Gelb Music in Redwood City, which is still there, by the way. And it was okay. So when I joined Andy Just Band, I had that Angus Young SG that I showed you, which I could barely keep in tune. It was you know, it was a decent guitar for playing keg parties, doing fusion stuff, but for playing real gigs, I couldn't really keep it in tune and stuff. And at the time, I was in love with Rob, and I was in love with Larry, Lee Ritenour, Chris Kane, Lyle Workman, all the cats that I really dug that were speaking to me were playing at 335. So Andy just was friends with the guy at Gelb, and we went in there to get me a guitar. I didn't have any money, and so I immediately spotted this one, and I played it, and I just, you know, spoke to me immediately. As soon as I played a note, it just spoke to me. And then he said, well, that one's expensive, you know, put that back. Let's look at some other ones. And I was playing all the other ones. I'm like, well, it's not as good as that one, you know. So, and this was in about 87 or maybe 88, or probably 87. And at the time, these guitars were not hip at all. Everybody had a solid body guitar with a Floyd on it, single pickup. Everybody was trying to be Eddie, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And so nobody was, the 335 was a decidedly unhip instrument at the time. So I got this guitar brand new for $700. And I didn't have the money, so they let me pay half up front and then half a month later. And that was how I got this guitar. And I had buddies of mine that said, man, don't ever buy a brand new guitar off the rack, you know, get a used one and this and that. I've never one day in my life regretted getting this guitar. And as you can see, it kind of looks like a 59 anyway.
Yeah.
It's been,
you played it a lot.
Oh, dude, it's been this thing right here, this plate, this kind of plate around the jack. That happened in Norway when I was playing there with the Ford Blues Band, and some drunk Norwegian Viking guy like fell over and caught the end of the cable and pulled it into the wood. And so we were going to refinish it, and I ended up just putting like a big thing over it and keeping it. But anyway, this guitar's been with me since then. I mean, it's been a long time that I've had this guitar, and I have a ton of other guitars, but this is the one. This is my baby. So yeah, nice. It's a 59 reissue dot neck. Totally. I've had it refretted, you know, probably 15 times or something. I mean, a lot. Yeah. And the only other thing that I replaced was I put a new bridge on with plastic saddles because I was breaking E strings. It came with steel saddles, metal saddles, and I was breaking E strings every night. So I put it on there, and everything else is stock except for the frets. And I just, every single day, this guitar feels better to me, you know?
Nice, man. I'm with you. You know, I'm the kind of guy that plays the same guitar for a long time. So it's, you know,
Yeah, I always see you. That's your go-to, right? The black, the
it's
black
about
Kelly.
15 years with this one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that guitar sounds real, dude.
It's a good one, man. It's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're
But,
connected to that guitar
but
to
like
this one.
Kirk will have a different guitar the next day, you know?
I know,
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. It sounds every one of them sounds unbelievable.
Oh, he
And
sounds like himself on anything he plays. Dude, like
every,
Eric Gales, I just produced his new record. We could put any guitar in his hand. Les Paul, 335. It sounds like his Strat upside. He sounds like Eric Gales on any guitar. It didn't matter what we put in his hands.
I can, dude. That guy is so unbelievable. I can't wait to hear that record you guys made, man. I'm so excited about it.
It's very good, and I'm proud of it. I'm excited for people to hear it.
Oh, yeah, what a monster. And yeah, you're right. He's I've seen videos of him just sitting in on somebody else's rig, and it just,
Yeah.
oh, there he is. That's it, you know?
Yep. All right. Number 9. What keeps you motivated, man, and pushing to learn new stuff? You said, you know, the coronavirus got you motivated to learn new stuff, but what keeps like the flame burning? Is it just that you love it so much, or you know, what is it that keeps you going?
It is that. It's pretty much that. I really do love it. I swear I feel like I'm 15 still, and
Yeah.
I'm still excited every time I'll discover a new player or a new record that I love, or see a video of somebody like you or Eric or somebody, Kirk, you know, and you know, like that keeps me going, because I just go, man, there's so much. There's just so, you never reach it, you know.
Never. No,
You never.
it's a never-ending journey. But that's what's
It
so
is,
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is. It's
it is.
total joy, and you know, it's like you open one door and there's 5 doors behind it, you know, I think for me, I'm just constantly, I'm either discovering like a new player or somebody that I've never heard, or maybe a record from somebody, like, you know, like I just recently discovered a Wes Montgomery record that I had never heard before.
Wow.
And it was like here first time all over again. And I was just like,
Yep. Yeah.
you know, holy crap, I got to sit down and learn some of this. And, but again, I'm so all over the place with music that I find myself just, it never gets boring for me, because I'm listening to so much different stuff. And so and of course in my head, I know how I want it to sound, and I know how much better I want to be at certain things. But it never feels like work, man. It's always just, I can't wait to tomorrow to start working on this thing, or to, you know, to learn a new technique, or man, I love, you know, like that Mateo guy with the finger style guy. I forget his last name.
Oh yeah, Mateo Mancuso. Yeah.
Mancuso. Yeah, Mateo Mancuso. I mean, geez, I watched that guy play Cherokee, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, man, there's just so much shit I got to do, you know.
That technique is just like, what the heck? Like, how do you? Yeah.
I mean, as long as there's stuff like that around that you've never heard of, and it was like that back in the day too, except that we didn't have YouTube. You know,
Yep.
you go to Norway and there'd be some guy in a fishing village somewhere, you know, who could play like Pat Martino, you know. And
Yeah.
I remember after a gig one night, like somebody took us to a house party with the Ford Blues Band, and there was an organ trio playing in this living room, and I swear to God, it was like some of the most unbelievable stuff I ever heard. Never heard of any of these guys. They're just guys that live in town and just love jazz, and they would just throw down in the living room, and I never heard of them or from them again. Yeah. And so as long as there's new stuff like that for me, I just the fire gets lit like almost on a daily basis. You know, I really, very rarely will I take a day or two off, and if I do, man, I read somewhere, I think that Jeff Beck said, you know, he'll put the guitar down like for months and then pick it up again. I could never do that, you know, but
nope.
Even a day or two off sometimes where I just don't play, and then I come back to it, it's like I'm starting over again. You know, the technique kind of goes down, but it's just always exciting for me, and I still feel like a kid taking guitar lessons every day. You know.
Yep. It's amazing how you can learn something and get that You know, there's other things that you can get yourself involved into, and when you realize you've learned something and you're just scratching the surface, you could get frustrated. And this is not the way with
Oh,
this thing. It's like I just want to keep going, and I hope that it never runs out, so that I can keep
mhm.
going and get something new every day.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. And when you're listening to different styles of music like we are, man, there's always like new sources of inspiration. It's not like
Always.
we're only into blues or we're only listening to rock or jazz or whatever. It's like, I'll be, I went through a huge Peter Green thing recently after he passed,
Mhm.
and I was just so into that, for the last couple of months. I mean, I'm always into Peter Green, but I mean, I just all of a sudden I was like, oh God, I got to listen to all those records again. And listening to live stuff on YouTube that I had never heard. And I've heard Peter Green a zillion times, and there was stuff, oh my God, I got to learn that. How did he get into the four from there, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then bam, out of the blue, out of left field, I'm like into Richie Blackmore, like I'm listening to, like, should have been a Leo. And I'm just going, oh my God, the tone, the feel of my brother. So it's never ending. And I feel like, there's so much more stuff to discover.
Yep.
I get easily distracted.
Yep. Well, in a good way though.
Oh, in a good way. It's all good. That's the thing is sometimes I'll go, man, I need discipline. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I doing? I mean, why can't I listen to Deep Purple for a couple of days and then get back to listening to Peter Green? You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
and then, yeah, maybe I'll put on this Tom Waits record because I haven't heard it in a couple of years and listen to Mark Ribot, or something. That's what I love about it is just you can always find something inspirational. And I never have a problem being inspired and wanting to get better because that's all I want to do all the time.
Well then, okay. So then that leads us to our last question. Besides Travis picking, where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, what do you? Is it just keep on keeping on, or is it you have a goal in mind?
Well, I would say definitely keep on keeping on. I feel like I'm just so fortunate to be able to do nothing but this. I know you feel the same way, and I know like we've both been through lean times
Hmm.
and great times, my dad used to say that the worst day fishing is better than the best day working.
Hmm.
So at its worst, doing this all the time is pretty damn good, and it's
Without
better than
question.
any job I hope to get. And and I got to tell you, man, like during this pandemic thing, I got friends of mine who are like accomplished, successful musicians who are getting day gigs. They're just like, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
There's going to be no music scene for me. I'm going to work for Amazon or something. And I feel really grateful that I'm able to keep playing. And like I heard you say with Oz earlier today, like if I can just play enough to pay the bills and keep it going, man, I'm happy with that. But uh, I do have a specific goal, uh, and you've been very inspirational in this, by the way. I want to do a record. I've never done a record, and so one of the reasons I got sidetracked on this Corona thing, like from doing the Travis picking, which was my initial goal. Like, oh, okay, I'm a Travis pick, is I decided I'm going to finally start trying to write a tune.
Oh wow. All
And
right.
yeah, I mean, I've never, all my time has been spent playing guitar, playing other people's tunes. I love contributing. I write with other people, but I never sat down by myself and try. I come up with a million what I think are cool ideas and I record them, and then I never finish them. And I wanted to ask you about this too, about your writing process, but I decided during the lockdown that I said, okay, I'm going to pick out a few of my favorite ideas and try and finish them, at least in demo form,
Hmm.
so that I could get together with cats and play. And then eventually I would like to do a record because it's at this point, it's almost embarrassing to not have an album out. And I attribute most of that to extreme insecurity on my part because like, I feel like I'm learning how to play the banjo or something. It's like something new to me, learning how to write a tune. And I don't want to do an album of just guitar solos. I would want it to be an album of songs, stuff that I've written that isn't necessarily just guitar, but like music. Because I'm also a huge fan of great songs. And so when you're listening to you know, when you're listening to Brian Wilson or the Beatles or XTC or you know, people that I consider to be, you know, great songwriters, like, you know, there's nothing I can come up with that interests me like that, you know. So I almost don't even want to try. And I had a conversation with Drew Zing about this before he did his solo album, and
Yeah.
we both sat up all night one night talking about how, you know, sometimes the anticipation is often better than the payoff. You know, where you go, oh man, yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yes.
I hear this, I hear this rhythm section, the vibe is this, the guitar sounds like this, and then you get in and start doing it, and it doesn't come out like that, and I'm just going like, oh my god, I don't want to put this up. So I've been afraid to do it. And Drew, after that conversation, goddamn him if he didn't go out and put out the most incredible record of, you know, his own stuff.
Yep.
With like one cover on it. So that was very inspirational. And like the stuff that you're doing, man, you know, like when I hear that, I just go, God, man, I got to do at least one record.
You got to do it, man.
Okay.
Well, you've put it out there to the world now, so now you got to do it. You got to make this record.
No, this is that. But anyway, that's a long way of answering your question. That is my goal. In 5 years, I would love to have at least one record of stuff that I wrote that I feel represents me as a player. But then you get into, okay, is it going to be a blues record? Is it going to be a rock record? That's
no, it's going to be a John Wedemeyer record. Come on, get it out there.
Well, the good news is these days you don't have to worry about a label going, oh, well, no, we need like 12 blues tracks or whatever. No. You can put out a hodgepodge of different styles and nobody's going to give a shit, you know?
Yeah, dude.
And people like us will dig.
Well, that makes me excited to know that that's coming because that'll be great. I'm looking forward to it already.
Well, hey, man, maybe I'll do it in your studio, you know, once I get some tunes together.
Well, I'm always here.
I love what you're doing in there, and I mean everything that I've heard that's come out of there just sounds unbelievable. All the instruments.
Well, dude, I'd be honored to help you with it, man. I would be honored to help you.
Well, you know, I mean that's the goal right now is to try and write some tunes and come up with maybe a dozen tunes that I'm proud of, and that hopefully kind of represent at least a little bit of a cross section of stuff that I love. I would obviously there'd be some blues on there. But I want to do some rock stuff, maybe some chicken picking stuff. Yeah. You know, maybe a Travis. Who knows? But,
you never know.
But I think my goal is and at this point, man, in my life, after losing, you know, just about everybody that was close to me, you know, it's a legacy thing. You know, it's like what if, like I'm driving home from this gig I did tonight, and what if I got T-boned by a semi on the freeway, and all there is YouTube videos. You know, it's like I want to have something that I can be proud of after I'm gone, and somebody can go, "Hey, this is what we sounded like." You know.
Well, I can't wait to hear it.
Thanks, man. Well, I'll definitely keep you posted. I just gotta get those tunes together, man. I mean, and I already kind of know who I would want to play on it. And
nice, man. Nice.
But you've been very inspirational in that, man. Because
thanks, man.
I love what you're doing, stuff that you're putting out, and I mean, it's just always every time I hear you, I go, God damn, man, why can't I do that? You know?
Oh, come on, man. Come on. That's nice of you to say.
No, you know what I mean, though.
I feel that way when I listen to everybody. You know, it's but it's that's the kick in the butt you need. You know, I love it. I love that feeling of, holy shit, why I got to do that. You know, I love that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, for me, it's like I said, it's like learning a new axe. It's like I picked up a banjo and I'm learning how to play. And, you know, trying to write a tune for me is from another planet, because I've always spent time just playing guitar and playing other people's tunes. But I really want to get to the point where I can, you know, put some tunes together that I'm proud of, that also have guitar in it, but aren't necessarily, you know what I mean? Like when you listen to like a Jeff Beck record, it's, you know, you listen to like Blow by Blow and it's got great guitar, but it's also cool tunes and melodies and stuff that you sing and you know, like you know, the stuff you're putting out too, man. It's like it's got vibe, it's great tunes, it's interesting, you know, and it's loaded with killer guitar and amazing tone. And so that's my goal.
Awesome.
I really, that's the thing that I want to do more than anything at this point.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, that's a good goal. All right, so we made it to the end of the 10 questions. So members, if you hang on, there's going to be an extra little video for you. And if you're not a member yet, hit the join button or at least subscribe. Come on. But John, dude, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I love your playing, man, and it's so great to get to hang a little more even virtually. And I hope when the world gets back to normal, we can do some real hanging and playing.
Man, I know we have never. I remember you came to Vegas and we were out. You know, we went out to eat and stuff,
Yep.
there was nothing going on. There were no blue, and we wanted to go play. And man, I'd love to sit down and play sometime and pick your brain and just jam a little bit.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
And man, I'm like I say, I'm a huge fan. I'm so honored that you asked me to do this, man, because you know all the best cats, and so man, thank you for asking me to do this.
Anytime,
And
man.
I'm looking forward to us hanging, man.
Anytime.
For
And
sure.
and there will be links to all things John Wedemeyer in the description. So thank you everybody for watching, and members, we'll be right back.